What if you woke up tomorrow in a country where no one spoke your language, you didn't know a soul, and even a trip to the grocery store felt like climbing a mountain in the Alps without wearing proper winter gear? This is actually what happened to me in 2022, and I didn't pause to take in the enormity of my choice. I knew I was adaptable, but adaptability has always been born from necessity rather than choice. And moving to Portugal by myself, knowing no one and without visiting here first, was a choice. Hello. For those of you who are new to my podcast, I'm Kimberly Ann. I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for being part of this adventure. I started writing on Substack in 2022 and creating this podcast about a year ago, maybe 2023, 2024 probably. I had a prior podcast before this, but I wanted to share my journey, and as most things, my focus has shifted to help others achieve their dreams of moving abroad. I'm a US expat. I moved to Portugal in 2022. I moved here by myself, sight unseen, and without a support group. And prior to moving to Europe, I traveled the United States in a converted van for a year, also by myself. And to learn more about me, I'll have a bio link if anybody's interested. Today, I want to talk to you about adaptability. And by the way, this is podcast number 38. And the title that I used for the Substack article is Thriving Abroad, Why Adaptability is the Key to Success, Embracing Change to Build a Life You Love Abroad. The reality of moving abroad can be both exciting and terrifying. Adaptability is the key to both moving abroad and traveling, and a recent mishap reminded me of this, but I'll go into that in a bit. First, imagine that you've just landed in a bustling foreign city. It's nighttime and you have no cell service. You can't schedule an Uber. You're wrestling a suitcase or two or three or four, and maybe even a stressed out, beloved pet that you carried over an ocean on your 14-hour flight. The streets are alive with unfamiliar sounds, signs in a language that you can't read, and locals who rush past without a second glance. Your phone's map won't load because your eSIM isn't working, and suddenly the place you were so excited to move to feels claustrophobic and terrifying. Anxiety creeps in, and with it, the questions of self-doubt emerge. What have I done? Am I crazy? Should I have listened to everyone who told me not to do this? Internation's Expat Insider Report from 2021 states that 56% of expats find adapting to the local culture challenging, particularly in new countries with vastly different social norms or values. It is not my intention to scare anyone with this podcast. Quite the contrary. It is my intention to empower you. And I have to do an aside now, and in my podcast, I often do an aside where I just talk about something that's not in the article, but I recently started a YouTube channel, and I'm getting a lot of trolls, which means I've arrived and gives me a lot of energy, which is weird, but it's true. So yeah, the trolls kind of have the opposite effect on me. I mean, I'm almost 60 years old. I've been around the block a few times. Not afraid of trolling, and I don't respond, and I don't really care. It's just people wasting their time and mine. However, one woman who I could consider a troll said that that because I couldn't find a market for the first several months I was here, and it's not that I didn't find where to buy groceries. They have fruterias on every corner, fruit stands and fruit stores, and they're abundant and I'm vegan, so I wasn't starving. It wasn't a huge issue, but I didn't understand the difference between the different markets and actually where to go to find them. I didn't know. I was new here. And she said that she basically found that ridiculous because she was in her mid-70s, and the first thing that she did when she landed in any new country as a tourist was to find all the markets. And it was really easy for her, and she never had to ask anyone for help or directions. And good for her. That's awesome. But being a tourist and moving to a new country are completely different things. As I mentioned prior in this podcast, I had 4 suitcases with me. I actually didn't. I had three suitcases and a very old sick dog that I was dealing with and nowhere to live. So finding a market was not something that I could easily do. I couldn't walk around down the street with suitcases and a sick dog, old dog. He was on and off sick, and figure out where to go to the market. Plus, I couldn't enter the market with the dog anyway if I had found one. So, I mention this because everyone's experience is different. I'm not saying that my experience is going to be your experience at all. It is not. I can guarantee you it's not going to be your experience. But that doesn't make my experience invalid, and that doesn't make me an idiot for not being able to find a market. I had a different experience, and that's okay. So I did want to mention that because I just think it's so silly when people are like, well, I'm better than you because I'm not better than anybody. I'm not better than you because I did or didn't do something. I'm not better than you because I moved to Portugal. I'm not better than you because I couldn't find a market, or I could find a market, or I figured out that this was the town I wanted to live in because there's a circus school. That doesn't make me more or less than anyone. And I totally get that people need to make themselves feel better by comparing, but I don't think that's really healthy. So I know it's human nature. I do it. I try not to. I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just mentioning that as an aside. Back to what I had written about, which is if you know what you're up against and what qualities and skills to focus on and hone, then you too can do it. You can move abroad. After all, do you think about all of the things that could go wrong when you set out for your 3-week vacation? Traipsing through the south of France that you've been planning for the past year and being able to find a market? Absolutely not. And yet on my last overseas trip, which was over a year ago now, delays affected my flights, my luggage was lost, and when the luggage was returned, my suitcase was completely destroyed. Custom officials stopped me. I had to wait an hour after a 14-hour red-eye while they tore open a piece of wrapped artwork that I had owned since the 70s. They searched the internet for its value to determine the import duty. If you recall your last vacation, you'll most likely remember encountering some bumps in the road where you too were forced to adapt. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. For expats, no words could ring truer. Moving abroad is the ultimate comfort zone breaker, with challenges that demand flexibility, resilience, and an open mind. And that quote was by Neil Donald Walsh. And I probably should have started with, this is a quote by Neil Donald Walsh, but I didn't, so I ended with that. I want to talk a little bit about what my Algarve experience, now not so recent, a few months ago, Algarve experience taught me. A few months ago, I went on a long-awaited trip down to the south of Portugal. It's a 5-hour drive from where I live in Porto if I don't stop for gas, but of course I have to. So it takes about 5 to 6 hours, and it's also dependent on the weather. Now, many here, especially in Europe, consider that a far drive, a really, really long drive. And I don't, because it's really similar to driving from San Francisco to Los Angeles, which I did several times a year when I lived in the US. Plus, I love driving. I have a really good friend who owns a farm down in Lagos. It's in the Algarve, and I spent 6 weeks there 2 months after I arrived in Portugal. It was in November of 2022, and I had recently come from living in a van for a year and staying in not the best Airbnbs for several months. So the farm was a dream come true. I was in love with it. And over the years, I've built it up to the point where it's become this fantasy utopia for me. So much so that 2 months ago, I started scouring rental sites for a farm of my own here in Porto. Not that I can afford one, but as a fantasy. And this trip, the trip that I took down to the Algarve recently, took months to happen. We kept putting it off. She had guests. There was rain. She hosts a lot of guests, which I think is amazing. She also has a dog hotel with heated floors, several acres of land with fruit trees, a dog run, 2 adorable pigs, and a freestanding yoga studio. Oh, and an outdoor kitchen, an outdoor bathroom, and an outdoor shower. Plus, her guests get to stay in a caravan. April, it turns out, was a very different beast to November. April is when all the biting buggies make their appearances. And maybe also, probably, I'm pretty sure, because I had built her farm up in my mind to this massive scale. This experience, this time was just different. The bathroom in her abode is also a hole in the ground, but elevated with a toilet seat. But it's not really the height of comfort, and it had some issues, and I'm not going to go into detail, but it takes some maneuvering to both sit and stand. The outdoor shower water is heated by solar. It stays warm for a few minutes at best, but hey, at least I had a shower. I didn't have that in my van. Plus the wind while you're showering, it makes it pretty cold. So again, in 2022, coming from the van, this was a luxury having her outdoor shower. And it's still something I fantasize about having myself. But back in November, there were no biting ants in the shower. And this time, there were. So I drove down on a Saturday. I was planning to stay for 8 days. And my heart was just full. I was so excited. But I drove back 3 days later in a mad rush to leave. Because in the 2 full days and 3 nights that I stayed in my friend's comfortable caravan, bugs ate me alive. And not just any bugs. I suspect, and I pray that I am wrong, they were bed bugs. Now, she maintains that there are not bed bugs and that I was bitten by mosquitoes. But on Sunday morning, I had 3 bites on my face. On Monday morning, there were 12. And on Tuesday morning, there were 52. And yes, I counted them. The bites were in a zigzag bed bug pattern. And for the YouTube portion of this podcast, I will put photos up. And the bites only happened while I was sleeping. Now, the rest of my body was fully covered because even in April, it was super cold and I had, without heat in a caravan, and I had just head to toe, well, not head to toe, neck to toe, fully covered. And I had only brought 1 pair of semi-warm items because I really thought that it was going to be hot there. So I slept in the same things. Anyway. That's a beside. So my arms were covered, my legs were covered, and so on. When I returned, or after the 3 days, my arms, from walking around in the daytime without wearing anything on my arms because it was warmer in the day, they were covered with mosquito bites. My hands had spider bites and what I suspect were bed bug bites. My feet had ant bites. The biting ants hurt so bad. I had no idea they hurt so much. So anyway, my dog, who I thought would love running in my friend's dog run, was miserable. She was confused. She was upset if I left her even for 3 minutes. The other dogs in the dog hotel were half her size. They did not want to play with her. And she's very social, my dog. And she plays with all sorts of, all sizes of dogs, little dogs, big dogs. She just loves it. And they were not interested. You know, she's very young. She's 2 years old. And she has a lot of energy, but she also doesn't really like or understand being out of her comfort zone. And there were a lot of issues. So I couldn't leave. My friend was going out and doing things. I couldn't do stuff with her because I had to stay with my dog. And so there were some issues. And the reason that I'm even telling you this story is because I had to quickly adapt and pivot. And since I'm an annoyingly cup half full person and like to be forthright when possible, I told my friend the truth. I said, I had built your farm up to be this grand utopian fantasy, one that I was super envious of and wanted myself. And now I realize it's much too difficult. And she laughed and she said, it really is so hard. You have no idea. And I do have an idea because I see her constantly working on the farm. When I spent the 6 weeks there before, I did see all the work that she was doing, but I romanticized it. She's constantly weeding. She's chainsawing wood for her wood burning stoves all the time. Non-stop cleaning. She's always fixing things because things are always breaking. As a matter of fact, yesterday I got a photo of the roof tiles that needed to be replaced and how she had to hire a handyman and replace all of the roof tiles. I saw her work when I was there, both last time and this time, from sunup until sundown. But I also saw how fit and happy she was. She's 10 years older than me, but you would never know it by looking at her. She has the body of a 20-year-old, for real. She began each day really early. She would practice in her yoga studio. She would spend her afternoons reading and relaxing, having lunch in her outdoor kitchen. And in the evening, she goes out to socialize with friends before retiring early to bed. But all the rest of the time, she's working her butt off. And I wanted what she had. I wanted the fantasy that I saw, the fantasy that I had built up. But that's what it was, a fantasy. And I don't even think I was consciously aware of how much I was projecting my own hopes and dreams onto someone else's life. So I had to pivot. It took some courage. And I will tell you that knowing when to walk away is really important. And it was big for me. So on the third morning of being covered in bug bites, I made the executive decision to leave 5 days early. I'd been awake all night long, worrying and wondering what to do. And in the morning, I finally felt clear. It was the right decision. I had to reschedule some work that I had planned for the day. And I'm fortunate enough that I could, because I work for myself. I told my friend, and despite her attempt to persuade me to stay, which she did, I remained firm in my decision. I was just too uncomfortable to remain. And with a heavy heart but a clear mind, I packed everything I owned in plastic garbage bags in case of bed bugs. I loaded my car, I took her out to lunch, and then I hightailed it out of the Algarve, driving straight back to my apartment in Porto. Now, upon returning, I realized how much this vacation taught me and cost me. First of all, I brought far too many things, and I had to spend 3 hours a day for a week decontaminating. And then after that, I spent about an hour every other day. It took me almost a month to decontaminate everything that I brought. It was a nightmare. It really was. It was very difficult. I had a lot to do. And I had been complaining about my apartment before I left and was even looking for other places to move. And now, I mean, it's months later now, but when I returned, I had a huge appreciation for it. I still do. Plans don't always go the way you expect them, including vacations. And adaptability and pivoting are necessary qualities for travel and living abroad, especially for living abroad. And I could tell you all of the things that I did to decontaminate for bed bugs, and I will just say that I had to wash, or I chose to wash everything in a super hot water. And because of that, my bill for my energy bill was triple for 2 months. And it was not fun. And also the gas that it took me to drive down there and back. And anyway, I went down to stay with her to have a vacation and to save money, and I ended up spending a lot more than I had budgeted or anticipated. And that's what happens sometimes, because there are challenges that do demand adaptability when living abroad. And here are a few. One is culture shock. So you have to learn and adjust to new social and societal norms, and that can be a challenge. But I like to say the challenge and then the solution. I've been this way my whole life. I'm very solution oriented. So I'm going to talk about the challenge and then the solution in this section. So the solution is to educate yourself, learn about the culture, make local friends who are interested in answering your questions and teaching you. Number 2 is language barriers, and this will lead to difficulty in communicating, a sense of isolation, and difficulty finding what you need to survive, like in my case, a market. And I stick by that, so you can call me whatever you want. It's fine. I like saying that, another aside, I like saying that finding a market was really difficult for me because it's the truth, but also so that you don't feel bad about yourself if you are struggling with something that, like a simple day-to-day task. Because when you move to a new country, simple day-to-day tasks become huge and overwhelming. I shouldn't say do become, they can become huge and overwhelming, and they did for me. And so I think it's really important to talk about that. That's just me. Solution for the language barrier is start studying the language before you arrive in your new destination. Ask people who speak both languages for help. And I actually wrote an article and I have a podcast about learning a new language and lots of resources, so I will link to that in the show notes, or if you're looking at the YouTube video, I will link that below. Number 3 is bureaucracy. And this is the area that I believe one has to become the most adaptable. The solutions are patience. Honestly, it's the number 1 solution. Take up meditation if you don't already practice it. That will help with your entire moving process. Research what you need to do, and also ask the expat community. And I'll give you another aside. So I need a Portuguese driver's license. And in order to get one, you have to give them your U.S. driver's license. Fill out a bunch of paperwork, go to their version of the DMV for a meeting, and hand in all the paperwork and get approved, and you get a temporary license. Temporary license is only good for 6 months. Now, I've talked to a few people that have gotten their driver's licenses here, and some say that it comes in a week or 2 or a month or 2. Well, it's been 6 months for me. My temporary license expired 6 months ago, or was only good for 6 months, so it expired this month. I haven't been able to get a new appointment to get the temporary license extended. I paid a company for this service. I do not recommend that. They have been even more difficult to deal with than the Portuguese DMV. They did not do what they promised. They did not deliver. And we've been going back and forth, and I recently said to them, look, you haven't delivered on what you promised, what I paid you for. I need another appointment to get the extension. And they said, yeah, we'll get you another appointment for another 30 euros. And I said, no, why would I pay another 30 on top of what I've already paid for a service that you never even completed? And the other thing that's interesting is they're a relocation company, and I have a lot of clients asking for relocation company referrals. I will never, ever refer this company. And of course, I didn't tell them that because I'm not going to, that just seemed petty. But it was also another reason why I hired them, because I was just for something simple, a simple task, was to see how well they could handle a very simple task, which they could not handle. So I'm saying this to let you know that the bureaucracy is really, it doesn't work well here on most occasions. I will say on most occasions. I've talked about quite a bit how my visa expired almost a year ago, and I still, or not my visa, but my temporary residency, and I'm supposed to get my permanent residency, and so I don't have it. And they've extended it because a bunch of people's residency has expired. It's a long story. I don't want to go into it now, but it is extended again till October, and they will keep extending it. However, I can't leave Portugal until I get my new permanent residency card because my temporary one expired. So there's a lot of stuff that will come up. And so you have to have patience, you have to have understanding, and that's just part of it. I've lost count, but I think this is number 4, is housing challenges. And there's a lot of, number 1, it's hard to get an apartment right now, and especially for a lower price. It was much easier when I moved here. Not much easier, but easier. And so there are housing concerns and housing issues for sure now. And I suggest, if you are a landlord, that you don't rent or ask for above market price so that you don't price people out, because that's not okay. That's one thing I do talk about quite a bit, but what I want to talk about really in this podcast is that there are issues with the apartments themselves. Like mine has no heat or AC. It's typical. Not all European countries have this, but many do. And this isn't the place to talk about that in detail, because I do talk about that in detail a lot, but it's something to look at. It's something to consider. It's an issue. I have no elevator. I live on the 2nd floor, which is actually the 3rd floor because the ground floor is 0. And I have 6 flights of stairs to walk up to get to my apartment. There's quite a bit of noise, and that's been the most difficult for me. So in a city, especially in Europe, you may experience road noise, barking dogs, partying neighbors, crying babies, trash trucks, the sound of glass thrown in the recycling bin, screaming children if you're near a school, as I am, screaming football fans and honking cars if you're near a stadium, as I am, all night, loud firecrackers during every celebration, even a football win, fireworks quite a few times a year, drunk people singing on the street, and more. For example, this morning I had 2 tourist buses parked in front of my apartment, huge, and they left their motors running. And then the apartment filled with Portuguese tourists. My dog, when I took my dog out, was terrified of the sound of the motors and was trying to run in between the tourists' legs because they wouldn't get out of the way for us to walk down the sidewalk. And the tourists started screaming at me and my dog. So that happens. That's part of living abroad. I'm just saying. So you will probably experience, if you live in the country and not in a city, you will probably experience large, loud, barking dogs all night long. That's what happened when I stayed at my friend's house in the Algarve. All night long. Really loud barking dogs. They never stopped. Every night. Roosters at 5 a.m., Airbnb partying people and loud music. So that happened quite a bit. Even though she lives out in the country in the middle of nowhere, there was an Airbnb that wasn't too far away, and there were people that were partying with loud music until about 2 or 3 in the morning. Very common. Now, you can find places that are quiet, but you have to search. You really have to look for them. And another issue with the apartments, especially in Portugal, is dampness, which can lead, and often does, usually lead to mold. So it's a huge topic. This is just a slice of it because I don't have time to go into the whole thing. A solution is rent before you buy, so you know more about the area that you're living in before you decide to purchase there. Earplugs are a must. Noise-canceling headsets will be your best friend. For AC and heat, you can buy a portable AC if needed. But I just learned to use my built-in blackout shades during hot days and opening the windows in the evening. And I live on a high floor, so I can open the doors at night. And I do know a woman who lives on the ground floor, and so she can't. So she got a portable AC. I use a fan when needed. I have a fan right here. So I do have fans pretty much throughout the house, and I have to use them, obviously. I have one in the living room, one in the bedroom, so on and so forth. For heat, I have 2 oil radiators on wheels. They're the best. I love them. I can't live without them. There's one behind me, but it's covered, so you won't be able to see it. Anyway, I also have 3 small forced air heaters, all with eco settings, and they work great. And if you use the eco setting, it doesn't use up too much electricity. So I use those all winter long. For dampness, I have 2 large dehumidifiers, and I always say if I could only purchase one item in Portugal, it would be a dehumidifier. And mine have clothes drying settings, which I highly recommend because your clothes can dry inside in the winter in overnight, maybe 2 days tops. I think this is number 5 or 6, I don't know. Community. So forming a new community can be stressful for sure. And I've written 2 articles and made a couple podcasts about it. I have plenty of solutions for finding community, and I will link those, but it's doable. It's totally doable. I'm not going to go into it here because I don't have the time, but being homesick is another issue that people do experience. I am not an expert or even a novice when it comes to this because I have never been homesick. So I feel like I was homesick once when I was in China, traveling in China for 6 weeks or 2 months, and I did experience homesickness, but it was because I missed someone specifically. However, since I moved to Portugal, I have not been homesick at all. Not at all. There are some foods that I miss, but I wouldn't call that homesick. But when I go back to visit, I eat the foods that I miss. I know that many people are homesick. Being away from your old support group, especially during holidays, can be challenging. As I mentioned, feeling nostalgic for comfort foods or places and conveniences can be difficult. And the differences in time zones can make communication with people back home problematic. The solutions are visit once a year. That's what I do. Stay in touch with your friends and community over WhatsApp or schedule video calls. That's what I do with my best friend. Find new comfort foods and things that you love in your new country. Make plans with your new friends on holidays. There are tons of expat groups that actually host holiday get-togethers. Take yourself on a vacation for your birthday. That's what I do. if and when I can afford it, or visit a friend in a nearby country. Another concern is around education and family concerns. Now, I don't have kids, so I can't speak to this personally, but I do have clients who worry about moving with their children and finding new schools, researching the schools, having to deal with each family member's needs. And of course, the solution is research, research, research. Hire someone who can help if you need to. Make friends with other expats who have done this in your country of choice and ask questions. If you're there in person, take them to lunch or to dinner as a thank you for their help. Another topic is identity and belonging, and this is a rather extensive topic. I have heard many people say that as an expat or an immigrant, you never truly are a part of a new society. You'll never be, and that's probably true. But it's different for me because I've never felt part of my old society as well. I've never felt part of any society. So I actually feel much more part of my new society, this one, and my new community. Will anyone ever consider me a native? Of course not. I am not a native. But I also don't have that need. Like, I'm strong enough in my own sense of self, and I have found an expansion here in Portugal that I never knew existed, and I am more comfortable here than I ever was in the United States. But I recognize it probably won't be that way for everyone. And I do have another aside. One of my closest friends here, who I met here, has been here for 20 years, is from the US, and she speaks fluent Portuguese, and everyone thinks she's a native. So now she did come here in her early 20s, and far less people spoke English here, so she was really thrown into the culture and had to adapt, and she did. So I'm not saying that somebody can't become fluent. I'm saying for me, it's going to be a challenge. I work on it all the time. I study not every single day, but almost every day. I was just studying before making this video. Here are my notes. If you're watching this on video, so you can see that I was studying. And for me, it's challenging. And so I like to say that even if it's challenging, I'm still doing it. I'm still making the effort because that is really important. Some solutions for identity and belonging would be developing your community, finding things you're interested in, joining social groups, learning to be an ethical expat, really important, and moving outside your comfort zone. Not just moving outside your comfort zone, like moving outside your comfort zone, like doing things beyond that are outside your comfort zone, beyond what you're used to and what feels safe, right? And then we come to navigating healthcare. And I know that this can be terrifying, and I completely acknowledge it. You don't know the language, you don't speak it, you don't know how the system works, you don't know how good it is, you're worried about costs. The solution would be ask locals and expats for help. Research what expats are saying before you move, sign up for the national healthcare system as soon as you arrive, and don't move without having travel health insurance to cover you before you can become part of the system. That's really important. Ask friends and other expats for referrals to doctors. I did that. I have a great doctor. I had a doctor before that I liked. There were some logistic issues. She was a little too far. Now I have one here that's much closer to me that I can walk to, and I got her from a friend. So an expat friend. So it helps. And my dentist as well, who I just saw yesterday. She was a referral from an expat friend. And these are doctors and dentists and professionals that do speak fluent English. So although my dentist yesterday said that she was going to take an A2 English class, and I said, well, you're fluent. And she said, no, I'm not, which happens all the time. You know, we always think we're worse than we are in a language. That's really common. So anyway, she speaks perfectly. She's adorable. In conclusion, embrace the adventure. Adapt and thrive, because moving abroad is not for the faint of heart. It is a journey filled with excitement, discovery, and adventure, but also with challenges, discomfort, and moments of doubt that test your resilience. As I've learned through my own experiences, from culture shock to bureaucratic battles, from bug-filled nights in the Algarve to the simple struggles of navigating a grocery store, for real, don't make fun of me, please. Adaptability is the most important quality that you can cultivate. You will, for sure, I promise, encounter situations that push you far outside your comfort zone. But these are the same situations that will help you grow in ways that you've never imagined. Yes, there will be setbacks, frustrations, and moments when you will question your choices. As a matter of fact, you will question every choice you have ever made that brought you to this exact moment. But with every pivot and every solution that you find, you will gain confidence and mastery over your new life. The key is to stay flexible, keep an open mind, and embrace the imperfections of this incredible adventure. Moving abroad isn't about creating a perfect life. It's about finding joy in the messy, unpredictable process of starting fresh in a new place. So whether you're dreaming of relocating to a new country or you're already living the expat life, remember, it's okay to struggle and not be able to find a market. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to change course when necessary. Adaptability isn't just a skill, it's a superpower. And with it, you can overcome almost anything. And it's also something you can learn, adaptability. I just said it's a superpower, but it's not one I was born with. So try, fail, try again, fail some more, try again, succeed. Succeed in one thing, fail in something else, try again. That's life, right? Take a deep breath, step outside your comfort zone, and trust that you have what it takes to thrive. You will be amazed by what you're capable of when you do. Thank you, thank you, thank you for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for listening. If you're listening to this in a podcast app, however you're consuming this, I appreciate you so much. And I've got a newsletter, of course. I've got, if you want to subscribe, that would overjoy me. I would love that if you would subscribe. I have a lot of information. I give away all my information for free on Substack. I'm giving away my information now for free on YouTube. I have a free newsletter that you get some downloadables to help you with your new adventure. I also have some paid opportunities only if you're interested. I do one-on-one private consulting. I've got some packages, and I do have a class, an expat class that teaches you how to move abroad on a budget if you're interested. And I just want you to have the best life that you can have. And I hope that you got some value out of this, because that is my goal, is to give you as much value as possible. And thank you for being here again. Have a great day or night wherever you are.